Om Jnana Timrandasya Chanansana Shanakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shigave.
Recording in progress.
Shichetayamanupistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svamrapakadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeyam Shiro Shiyuda Padakamanam Shirum Vaishnavam Shah Shirupam Parajatam Saganaragnatam Pitam Tam Sadhivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parjana Saitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Saganalita Shikshakam Vitam Shah He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Chatpate Kopesha Kopkakanta Radha Kanta Namustate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishvanu Sutadevi Pranamama Hare Priye Vancha Kalpa Visha Kripa Sindhu Visha Patnam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namo Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namini Namaste Saraswata Devi Gauravanya Pracharini Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskachari Desatarane. All the thing is in the cast above. I'm sorry. So I'm very happy to be with you again after some interruption. And we are going into very exciting pastimes now. The 2 chapters about the Brahman Sudama, that this is a pastime which is very dear to devotees. It shows how dear the devotees are to the Lord. So hearing about it, it's very satisfying for devotees, and especially this chapter has something to tell us. So we will start with reading verse 1. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shiracho Vacha Bhagavanyani Sanyani Mukundasya Mahatmana Viryan Ananta Viryasya Shrotam Ichami E Prabhu. King Parikshit said, "My Lord, O Master, I wish to hear about other valorous deeds performed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Mukunda, whose valor is unlimited." So before we hear about Sudama, the process of glorifying Krishna itself is glorified. So Maharaj Parikshit is very fortunate to have a desire to hear about Krishna. From the desire to hear about Krishna is born the desire to serve and to associate. So in these first 4 verses, Maharaj Parikshit expresses his desire to hear Krishna Katha. So these verses are very wonderful. They are inspirational verses for those of us who wish the desire to hear of Krishna, or wish their desire to increase. No, King Parikshit continues, O Brahman, how could anyone who knows the essence of life and is disgusted with endeavoring for sense gratification give up the transcendental topics of Lord Uttama's sloka after hearing them repeatedly? So what's the essence of our life? The essence of our life is to develop our relationship with Krishna and proceed towards the spiritual realm. So, can someone read, please, the purport of text 2, which is on the screen now, the purport of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur?
Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti comments herein that we see many persons who, even after hearing the topics of 1 minute, I have to minor skill. Yeah, okay. Vishwanath Chakravarti comments herein that we see many persons who, even after hearing the topics of the Lord repeatedly, give up their spiritual dedication. The Acharya replies that the word Vishesha Jnana is therefore significant here. Those who have actually understood the essence of life do not give up Krishna consciousness. A further qualification is to be Vishan Aha Kama Marganahi, disgusted with material sense gratification. These two qualities are complementary. One who has experienced the real taste of Krishna consciousness automatically becomes disgusted with the inferior taste of material pleasure. Such a genuine hearer of the topics of Krishna cannot give up hearing about Lord's fascinating pastimes. Thank you.
Thank you, Swam Jyoti Krishna Prabhu. Nice to see you all.
Thank you, Maharaj.
So we have here two qualities mentioned in the purport. And these two qualities, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur said, they go together. So we must cultivate them and get these qualities. That first is know the essence of life. The prayojan, what's the goal? Living in a relationship with Krishna every moment, which starts with seeing Krishna in this world, how he is the doer, how he controls, how he is Maya Jakshana Prakriti. And later, when we become purified, live in a direct relationship with Krishna, seeing Krishna in your heart. So first, knowing the essence of life. And the second thing which we must cultivate together is being disgusted with sense gratification. That as it doesn't bring satisfaction to the soul. And it brings so many problems. So these two go together. Text 3. Actual speech is that which describes the qualities of the Lord. Real hands are those that work for Him. A true mind is that which always remembers Him dwelling within everything moving and non-moving. And actually ears are those that listen to sanctifying topics about Him. So the Maharaj Parikshit is still speaking to Sukadev Goswami here. That it's a short purport. Can someone read this purport, please?
While continuing from the previous verse to glorify the sense of hearing dedicated to the Lord, King Parikshit mentions the other senses also, so that we gain a complete picture of Krishna consciousness. Here he declares that without any connection to Krishna, the Supreme Lord, all the organs of the body become useless. A similar statement is made by Shaunak Rishi in the second canto, third chapter, verses 20 to 24. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti mentions that the senses should work together in Krishna consciousness. In other words, whatever the eyes or ears experience, the mind should simply remember Krishna, who is within all things.
So what is the instruction here? Instruction is, whatever is going around us, we should fix our consciousness on Krishna. So these are wonderful things. There are wonderful things with the eyes and the ears that we are experiences, but whether we experience wonderful things or terrible things, we should fix our mind on Krishna. So one should simply remember Krishna, who is within all things. So, who can remember Krishna at all times? A problem, at least for me, but you may also have that problem that you cannot remember Krishna at all times. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, you can, Arjuna, by practice that and detachment. Abhyas and Vairagya, practice and detachment. So what in the consciousness pushes it to practice thinking of Krishna and be detached? Yes. And to do that in success and in failure. What will cause one to do this kind of things? It is resting much on desire. That a very deep desire. Everyone is based on everything is based on one's desire. The tree of the material world, 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, this tree is based on desire, just as the reflected tree is based on water. How do we increase our desire to remember Krishna? And how do we increase our desire for disgust of the material world? The two qualities are complementary, which means that they support each other. So one really must not want to be in illusion. That is the capacity one should not think that he is in the capacity of an enjoyer. To be able to succeed in this world, one must be free from the false sense of who he is and have a real sense of who he is. One must not wanting to be an enjoyer in this world. One has to be fixed in this. So this is required to benefit fully of Krishna Katha. Maharaj Parikshit is speaking and probably he has only 2 days left to live. That is already 5 days hearing the Bhagavatam. We are near the end. 2 days left. So we need a fixed focus about who I am and what is my purpose in life. It is beyond the intellectual platform. It is on the spiritual platform. This fixedness comes from hearing cultivated Krishna consciousness very deeply. It is not coming from the awareness that I'm going to die. No. When Maharaj Parikshit sat down on the bank on the Ganges, the first thing he said is that he wanted to hear about Krishna. This is what I want, he said. I want my consciousness to be bathed in Krishna. I don't want any other taste. I desire this. It is time for me to leave this world. I do not want anything other consciousness than Krishna consciousness. This hopeless addiction to Krishna's service is the price one has to pay. Up to this point, one has tasted, to the point that one has tasted. After that, one is propelled by that taste. So text 4. An actual head is one that bows down to the Lord in his manifestations among the moving and non-moving creatures. Real eyes are those that see only the Lord, and actual limbs are those which regularly honor the water that has bathed the Lord's feet, or those of his devotees. So this is Maharaj Parikshit's statement of the purpose of one's eyes and bodily limbs. So Shaunaka Rishi becomes inspired also in chapter 3, Canto 2, chapter 3. So one who has not listened to the messages about the prowess and marvelous acts of the personality of Godhead, and who has not sung or chanted loud by the worthy songs, by the worthy songs about the Lord, is to be considered to possess ear holes like holes of snakes, and a tongue like the tongue of a frog. The upper portion of the body, although crowned with a silk turban, is only a heavy burden if not bowed down before the personality of Godhead, who can award mukti. And the hands, though decorated with glittering bangles, are like those of a dead body if not engaged in the service of the personality of Godhead Hari. The eyes who do not look at the symbolic representation of the personality of Godhead Vishnu are like those printed on the plumes of a peacock, and the legs which do not move to the holy place are considered to be like tree trunks. The person who has not any time received the dust of the lotus feet of pure devotees upon his head is certainly a dead body. And the person who has never experienced the aroma of the tulsi leaves from the lotus feet of the Lord is also a dead body, although breathing. These are verses from Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, chapter 3, text 18 to 23, for your reference. So these tulsi leaves, they saved the 4 Kumaras. The fragrance of the tulsi leaves. So the conversion of the 4 Kumaras into devotees was due to their smelling the fragrance of the tulsi leaves offered to the Supreme Lord. So powerful that then in 2.3.24 it's mentioned about the heart is steel framed. It's like the essence of stone. So certainly that heart is still framed, which in spite of one's chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration does not change, even when one displays such signs of transformation as tears in the eyes and ecstatic standing of the hairs on end. So after saying all this, Maharaj Parikshit, he says, speak more. So he's very fired up to hear that text 5. So we have Sutta Goswami replies. So, yeah, going to another level here, Sutta Goswami speaking to the sage of Namaisaranya. Before was Maharaj Parikshit to Sukadev Goswami. Sutta Goswami said, Thus questions by King Vishnurat, the powerful sage Badarayani replied, is heart fully absorbed in meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudev. So he says King Vishnurat. Vishnurat means one who is protected by Vishnu. This Krishna Katha protects him against any other form of consciousness other than Krishna consciousness at the time of death. So therefore, Vishnurat, text 6. Sukadev Goswami, again to Sukadev Goswami now. Sukadev Goswami said, Lord Krishna had a certain Brahmin friend named Sudama, who was most learned in Vedic knowledge and detached from all sense enjoyment. Furthermore, his mind was peaceful and his senses subdued. So one cannot have a peaceful mind without subduing the senses. That text 7. Living as a householder, he maintained himself with whatever came of his own accord. The wife of that poorly dressed Brahmin suffered along with him and was emaciated from hunger. So, the one-line purport, Sudam's chaste wife was also poorly dressed, and whatever food she obtained, she gave to her husband. So she remained fatigued from what a surrender. So Yudhishthir Maharaj, he wanted to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice to show how all success and opulence is the property of the devotee. But here we see exactly the opposite. Sudam was poorly dressed and he had not enough to eat. So, text 8. The chaste wife of the poverty-stricken Brahmin once approached him. Her face dried up because of her distress. Trembling with fear, she spoke as follows. So, yeah. So, how poor they were. So, according to Shridhar, the chaste lady was especially unhappy because she could not obtain food to feed her husband. Further, she was fearful mute, thank you. Further, she was fearless to approach her husband because she knew that he did not want to beg for anything other than devotion to the Supreme Lord. That is a commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and I will try to get that on the screen. Vishwanath's moment. I will have to start it. Just a moment. Okay. So this text is purported on text 8. Nearly there, and then I will share it. So back. Share screen. Here it is. Vishwanachaka Bhakti Thakur's comment. Dispirited because her husband was unable to obtain any food for her husband, and trembling out of fear for her husband, because it was improper to ask the Lord for anything other than devotion, she spoke to her husband. So, we have heard Sudama's mind was completely under his control. How self-controlled these great personalities were. They were extraordinary personalities. So they lived in Purbanda in Gujarat. There is their house. It's a place. This place is very famous because it is the place of Sudam. And there is a replica of this house. So did someone of you ever go there, went there in Porbanda in Gujarat? No? Right?
I've been there, Maharaj.
You have been, you have seen the house?
Yes.
Can you describe it to us?
Very small, like a hut.
Like a hut, yeah. Okay. That very simple. That's,
Very simple.
thank you. That also in the text 7, go back, text 7, there in the Sanskrit you have the first word yatrechaya, of his own accord. That is an interesting word. It means on his own accord, which means by free will. When food would come by his own will, he would accept it. And when it didn't come, anyway. So if yes?
Can I pass a comment?
Yeah?
Can I pass a comment?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Like we described earlier, I think there's Chataka bird, that only relies on the rainwater. So if it comes, he's happy. If it doesn't come, he's still happy. So Sudama is in that state. If he gets some food or his wife gets some grains or whatever, they're happy. If not, they're still happy.
Yes. Thank you. That's a nice analogy that illustrates this. So his wife, when food came, she gave it to him rather than taking it for herself. Where is this kind of devotion today? That to text 9. Text 9. Text 9. O Brahman, isn't it true that the husband of the goddess of fortune is the personal friend of your exalted self? That greatest of the Yadavas, the Supreme Lord Krishna, is compassionate to Brahmins and very willing to grant them his shelter. So, first thing is, she did not call Sudama by name, because that was according to the culture. Just like children, they don't call their parents by their name. So, can someone read the purport on the screen, please?
Sri Vishwanatha Chakrabarti explained in his commentary how the Brahmana's wife has anticipated every possible objection her husband might make to her request that he go to Lord Krishna to beg charity. If the Brahmana might say how could the husband of this goddess of fortune befriend a fallen soul like myself? She replied by saying that Lord Krishna is Brahmanaya, very favorable disposed towards the Brahmanas. If Sudama might claim to have no real devotion for the Lord, she replied by saying that he is a great and wise personality who would surely obtain the shelter and mercy of the Lord. If the Brahmana might object the Lord that Lord Krishna is equally disposed to all the countless unhappy conditioned souls suffering the fruit of their own karma. She replied that Lord Krishna is especially the Lord of the devotees, and thus, even if he himself did not grant Sudama his mercy, certainly the devotees engaged in serving the Lord would mercifully give him some charity. Since the Lord protects the Sattvatas, the members of the Yadu dynasty, what difficulty would there be for him to protect a husband, a humble Brahmana like Sudama? And what fault would there be in his doing so?
Hare Krishna. How many Yadus were there? The Lord protects the Sattvatas, the members of the Yadu dynasty. How many Yadus were there? They were practically countless. If Krishna was maintaining them, then his wife said, why should he not maintain you? That Sudama was so austere, but both of them were so devoted that so we can also, this is the direct commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Can someone read this, please? It's very interesting.
O Brahmana, the master of Lakshmi is your friend. But how can the Lord of Lakshmi be a friend to me, so poor? But he favors the Brahmanas, Brahmanya. But I do not have the qualities of such a Brahmana. He accepts anyone who surrenders to him. But since I do not have devotion, I do not have the quality of surrender even. But he is Bhagavan, knowing everything. Seeing your suffering, he will be merciful. But how will he give wealth to just me when he is equal to everyone among all the infinite suffering souls similar to me, enjoying the fruits of their karma? He is the master of the devotees, Sattvatar Shabaha. He may not give, but the devotees serving him by fanning and other actions, being most merciful, will give. And since he maintains the Yadus, Sattvatar Shabaha, what burden or fault is it for him to maintain you?
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Text 10. O fortunate one, please approach him, the real shelter of all saints. He will certainly give abundant wealth to such a suffering householder as you. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, going to him, the object of the devotees and others also, those who are in want, even if you do not consider yourself a devotee, you are in want, and seeing you are worthy of charity, struggling to support your family, he will give generously. Text 11. Lord Krishna is now the ruler of the Bojas, Vrishnis and Andakas, and is staying at Dvaraka, since he gives even his own self to anyone who simply remembers his lotus feet. What doubt is there that he, the spiritual master of the universe, will bestow upon his sincere worshipper prosperity and material enjoyment, which are not even very desirable? So again, the question comes up. Sudam is worshipping Lord Krishna for a long time. And why is he in such a condition? Can someone read the commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, which is on the screen now?
But he may be in Indraprastha, Dwarka, or some other place in order to kill the demons. He has now given up his weapons and does not leave his city. He is only in Dwarka. He is the lord of the Bhojas, Vrishnis, and Andakas, so by his permission they will do his bidding. But I am embarrassed to ask anything from him. He gives himself unto the person who just remembers him without asking for anything. The genitive case smarata stands for the dative case smarate, unto the person who remembers. What to speak of giving things desired by the devotee, which is actually tasteless for him, na atibhishtam, because they are changeable, and moreover he is benefactor, guru of the universe. As well, by his desire, he gives things which are not prayed for to those who are desiring material things. Going to him and remaining silent, he will give what you desire, plenty of wealth, and also what he desires to give, being your benefactor, the sweetness of his lotus feet.
So where we are now in the Bhagavatam, Krishna has killed the last demons. The killing work is over. Now he no longer leaves Dwarka. Text 12 and 13. Sukadev Goswami continued. When his wife thus repeatedly implored him in various ways, the Brahmin thought to himself, to see Krishna is indeed the greatest achievement in life. Thus he decided to go. But first he told her, my good wife, if there is anything in the house I can bring as a gift, please give it to me. So he asked if there is anything in the house he could give to Krishna. This indicates how poverty-stricken they were. He could not think of anything, and when it turned out that there is nothing in the house, he had no food. He had no food, no tulsi leaves, so poor that Sudam's wife begged 4 hands of flat rice from the neighbors, because she had no flat rice, no any rice, no white or brown rice, nothing in the house. So poverty-stricken. 14. Sudam's wife begged 4 handfuls of flat rice from neighboring Brahmins, tied up the rice in a torn piece of cloth, and gave it to her husband as a present to Lord Krishna. So, the sadhus, when they travel, they make some flat rice and they carry it in their lota. And then when they want to eat, they add some water to eat something to fill their belly with. Text 15. Taking the flat rice, the saintly Brahmin set off for Dwarka, all the while wondering, how will I be able to have Krishna's audience? So he assumed the gatekeepers were going to stop him, as he was so poverty-stricken, and he was walking into a palace. Srila Prabhupada explains in a lecture why Sudam was so poverty-stricken. And that's interesting. How was it that he could not meet his own needs? Because Krishna gives himself to one who remembers him. Srila Prabhupada in Vrindavan, 1976, in November, he said, "Therefore it is said that when Krishna received Sudha and Vipra, a Brahmin, he immediately vacated his own seat and said, 'My dear friend, sit down here.' Rukmini immediately took the chamara because she saw that my husband is respecting this Brahmin, but he was dressed very poorly. He was lean and thin. They refused unnecessary necessities of life. They look poor and poverty-stricken, but they are not poverty-stricken. Mahatmanastu mam parta devim prakatyashrita bhajantyana namansu. Those engaged in bhajan never think of their property. They are living in their true wealth because they are engaged in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord. That is their wealth, and it is real wealth. It is not theoretical, but it is completely real, and their relationship is alive, and they are relishing that relationship. It's another kind of wealth. Bhajantyananya manaso. Bhajant means without deviation. The consciousness is completely focused because of Devim Prakati Ashrita. 9th chapter of the Gita. They receive the full shelter in the service of the lotus feet of Krishna. Those engaged in bhajan do not think of their property. The 6 Goswamis possessed nothing. They did not even have a hut, a house, as Sudam had. Raghunath Goswami, what was he eating every day? A palmful of buttermilk every day, and that was all he would eat. But poverty-stricken? No, they were the wealthiest of the wealthy. Srila Prabhupada spoke many times about one Brahmin. Saburijan Prabhu told this story a few times, and I think I told it also before, but I will repeat it. I must say I'm here alone in this center here, and someone can bring a parcel, and when the bell rings, I have to go for 1 minute, but I'll be back immediately. So, this story about this Brahmin. One Brahmin in Krishnanagar, he was poverty-stricken. He had nothing, and he was a great Sanskrit scholar. He would get some rice from his students and would cook it with tamarind leaves. A rich man came and said, "You are so poor. Tell me what you need, I will get it for you." But the Brahmin replied, "I feel satisfied, I do not need anything." But of course we cannot imitate that, because it springs from the depths of satisfaction in the heart. This is the challenge that devotees must reach. The nature of the soul is that it wants pleasure. If we can't get it on one level, we need to get it on another level. The Srila Prabhupada continues. Poor and not very nice clothes, but Krishna is my dear friend. So Sudam Vipra, externally he looked very poor. But how is he poor if Krishna is his dearest friend? How is it poverty-stricken? Suridam Sarvabhutanam. Krishna is Surid, the dearest of friends. So that is the greatest wealth. If your dearest friend has $85 billion, then is there any question of you being poor? Srila Prabhupada says, my dear friend, so Krishna speaking to Sudam, my dear friend, sit down here. And Krishna brought water and washed the feet just as a respectable person treats a Brahmin. This is etiquette. So I read a few more examples of how Srila Prabhupada told the story and what preaching points that he brought out. The first point is that Srila Prabhupada said, real wealth is bhajan. The second point, he says, the etiquette of dealing with Brahmins in the Varnashram, and Lord Krishna is showing that etiquette personally. Krishna plays the role of a king. He is the personality of Godhead, and he also respects the Brahmins. And when Narada used to come to Krishna, immediately he would get down from the seat and offer obeisances 16,108 times a day. When Narada would come, and Narada was smiling, just see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He accepted it as his service. So this was Srila Prabhupada, Sudan. 16. The learned Brahmin, joined by some local Brahmins, passed 3 guard stations and went through gateways, and then he walked by the homes of Lord Krishna's faithful devotees, the Andakas and Vrishnis, which ordinarily no one could do. He then entered one of the opulent palaces belonging to Lord Hari's 16,000 queens, and when he did so, he felt as if he were attaining the bliss of liberation. For the Brahmins, there were no restrictions. No one feared them. They were self-satisfied. We will read the commentary of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, which is on the screen. Can someone read this commentary, please?
He passed through 3 encampments of troops protecting the outer gates, Gulmani, and 3 courtyards with long rooms protecting the inner gates, Kaksha, and accompanied by some, passed near the houses of unconquerable Vrishnis and Andakas. He entered in a house among all the 16,000 palaces of 16,000 queens. That was the palace of Rukmini as confirmed by the Padma Purana. He remained silent for a second at the door of Rukmini's palace. Forgetting everything else for a short time, he remained as if merged in the happiness of Brahman.
Thank you. Like in the happiness of Brahman, must have been an experience. At that time, Lord Asyuta was seated on his consort's bed. Spotting the Brahman at some distance, the Lord immediately stood up, went forward to meet him with great pleasure, and embraced him. So Krishna is the most wealthy and Sudan the most poverty-stricken. 19. The lotus-eyed Supreme Lord felt intense ecstasy upon touching the body of his dear friend, the wise Brahman, and thus he shed tears of love. First, the Brahman felt the bliss of liberation, and then Krishna felt ecstasy by embracing the Brahman. Lord Krishna seated his friend Sudama upon the bed. Then the Lord who purifies the whole world personally offered him various tokens of respect and washed his feet. O king, after which he sprinkled the water on his own head, he anointed him with divinely fragrant sandalwood, aguru, and kunkuma pasts, and happily worshipped him with aromatic incense and a race of lamps. After finally offering him betel nuts and the gift of a cow, he welcomed him with pleasing words. Text 23. By fanning him with her Shamara, the divine goddess of fortune personally served the poor Brahmin, whose clothing was torn by dirty, and who was thin, that veins were visible all over his body. So how ironic. The goddess of fortune worshipping this poverty-stricken Brahmin, who was so skinny that veins were visible all over his body. His clothing was dirty, torn and ripped, no food practically speaking. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, Rukmini herself fanned him with a chamara. In another version of the text, Saibya, another queen waved the chamara, but this does not agree with the Padma Purana, Uttara Kanda. Text 24. The people in the royal palace were astonished to see Krishna, the Lord of spotless glory, so lovingly honor this shabbily dressed Brahmin, Vishwanath. He was served by Krishna, who was spotless glory, served by all wealth, and was able to deliver Sudama from his poverty-stricken state with his soiled clothing. 25-26. The residents of the palace said, what pious acts has this unkept, impoverished Brahmin performed? People regard him as lowly and contemptible, yet the spiritual master of the three worlds, the abode of goddess Shri, is serving him reverently. Leaving the goddess of fortune sitting on her bed, the Lord was embraced his Brahman as if he were an older brother. 27. Sukadev Goswami continued, taking each other hands, O king, Krishna and Sudama talked pleasingly about how they once lived together in the school of their guru. 28. The Supreme Lord said, my dear Brahman, you know well the ways of Dharma. After you offered the gift of remuneration to our Guru and returned home from school, did you marry a compatible wife or not? So, can someone read the purport, please?
Among civilized human beings, the question of ashrama or spiritual order is significant. In other words, every human being must execute prescribed duties as a celibate student, a married man or a woman, a retired person, or a renunciant. Since Lord Krishna could see the Brahmana was poorly dressed, he inquired if his friend had been properly married and was executing the duties of household life. Since he was not dressed as a renunciant, he would be without a suitable ashrama unless he were properly married.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that the text 29. Even though you are mostly involved in household affairs, your mind is not affected by material desires, nor, O learned one, do you take much pleasure in the pursuit of material wealth. This I am well aware of. So purport, Lord Krishna here reveals that in fact he was well aware of his friend's situation. Sudama was actually learned and spiritually advanced, and therefore he was not interested in ordinary sense gratification, as is the common man. So can someone read the commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, please?
Even though you are not speaking out of embarrassment, I know everything. With that intention, he speaks this verse. Though you are a householder and your heart is not disturbed by lust, I know, O wise one, Vidwan, that knowing the temporary nature of material enjoyment, you have little attraction for wealth, clothing, and other things. Therefore, I will not give these things now. The words praya, almost not, and ati, not too attached, indicate if you are attached only because of the request of your wife, I will give these things later. Just see, this man, though a householder, is without desires and does not desire anything from others. Even if forcibly given, he will not accept things. To broadcast his fame in Dwarka, I will not reveal his desire to anyone, and therefore will not give anything visible to him here. Can we go up, Maharaj, the screen?
Yeah, it's the end.
Oh, that's it. Okay, thank you.
So it seems Krishna is already making his plan. So he will not give anything visible to him here, because he does not want to reveal his desire to anyone. He's making his plan, so text 30. Having renounced all material propensities, which spring from the Lord's illusory energy, some people execute worldly duties with their mind undisturbed by mundane desires. They act as I do to instruct the general populace. Krishna says that also in the Bhagavad Gita. So, can someone read the purport of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur?
I know that you did not take sannyas like others, even though you are very renounced. Some, being detached, perform activities with minds unattached to desirable objects. Others perform activity in order to give up their mental natures, produced by the Lord's will, their contaminated state of subtle desires for material enjoyment. As an example of the first type, I perform activities as they should be done to teach people.
Thank you. The last verse for today. My dear Brahman, do you remember how we lived together in our spiritual master school? When a twice-born student has learned from his guru that all that is to be learned, when a twice-born student has learned from his guru all that is to be learned, he can enjoy spiritual life, which lies beyond all ignorance. So what does it mean? They live together in the house of the spiritual master. That, of course, we have heard in the 7th canto, the description of the brahmachari. 7.12.1 Shinarda Vacha Brahmachara Guru Kuleva Shandanto Guru Idam Acharan Dashvanicho Guru Siddhita Sarida. A student should practice completely controlling his senses, should be submissive, and should have an attitude of firm friendship for the spiritual master with a great vow. The brahmachari should live at the Gurukul only for the benefit of the Guru. So this verse explains the essence of the education that the boys would receive in the Gurukul. They would live for the benefit of their Guru, for their teacher, and they would continually practice control of their senses. This is what they were learning when they are young, when the senses are most out of control. Then when they are fortunate, they learn to control their senses, learning submission and obedience and humility under the guidance of a Guru. This is a different definition of education than what is going on in schools in temporary society. In schools today, they teach you how to economically succeed, how to get a good job, etc. So what a contrast to Sudama. He was so poor. From the contemporary understanding, Sudama was a failure. But Sudama had pure consciousness and he had no false ego. To control your senses, you need to control your mind. This education teaches character, and that starts with controlling the mind and senses. Without character, we cannot have integrity. So this is the section of today. So any comments, questions, please?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Prabhupada.
Thank you, Maharaj, for your nice teaching, and you are also welcome again to our midst. Maharaj, I just wanted to ask, normally we are told that before you become a householder from brahmachari life, you have to get all the equipment, like you have to get a house, a job, and so that you can maintain your wife and children. Like Sudama, before he got married, was he prepared before he got married?
Yeah, it seems Sudama that yes, he lived with what came from his own accord. That's what's it. So some things came from his own accord. But he was completely detached. If it comes, if it doesn't come, if Krishna wants to maintain me, all right. Otherwise, yeah, whatever happens is His mercy. That we cannot imitate that. That is, he was on the level of love of Krishna, prema. That if we are not on that level, we cannot imitate that. Now, with our intelligence, we must plan nicely to maintain a nice Shriyasta ashram so that the wife gets what she needs and that everything is running nicely. But there is a point. Simple living, high thinking. Don't endeavor for things you don't need, only what you need. And this Sudam Vipra, this story also shows that a devotee does not need much, is happy in every situation. And this satisfaction, to be satisfied in every situation of life, is something we need to cultivate. But that satisfaction comes only after we are subduing the mind. And that's one of the teachings here. So yes, we are not on that level. We have to do the needful to provide everything. But when it doesn't happen according to our plan, we must be like Sudama and accept it. We do our best. Does that help, Pavitra?
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I thought Kasturika had a question, no?
Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
In the beginning verses, we are talking so much about the desire. So how do we develop deep desire? Because devotees also have desires, but I can speak for myself. Sometimes, the desire is not so strong or it just quickly goes away. So can you give some practical tips to develop deep desire.
And developing this desire has two aspects we heard in the beginning. That's first we heard that we should be detached from sense gratification in this world, that we should become uninterested in sense gratification. I think we spoke about that in the beginning, these 2 points, knowing the essence of life and being disgusted with sense gratification. But being disgusted with sense gratification, so if we are not disgusted with sense gratification, then we want sense gratification. But how do we get disgusted by sense gratification? Also by hearing of the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam provides these two. It explains the consequences of engaging in sense gratification. And at the other end, it was about knowing the essence of life, understanding the value of living in a relationship with Krishna. And that is further in the first verses that has been explored. So how do we live in this relationship with Krishna? If we live in a relationship with Krishna, then we have our interest in this world and sense gratification will vanish. So that's the most important thing. We should never forget. I want to live in a relationship with Krishna. But that has different levels. If you are on the level of Kevala Bhakti, unalloyed devotional service, you feel spontaneously attracted. But when we are not on that level, then we hear the Bhagavatam, and the Bhagavad Gita, we hear we are not the doer, that we hear that Krishna controls everything. And then, by hearing that repeatedly, we learn to see Krishna's hand in our lives, and we become more the observer. We try, but then we see what happens and what Krishna does. And so by that philosophical awareness which comes from hearing, you cultivate. Illusory energy may overpower you sometimes, but then next moment you come to the point, let's take a step back and look. And that's an awareness that grows by hearing the Bhagavatam, that how Krishna, we hear how Krishna arranged everything for his devotees. But there is a deeper point in this story from Sudam, because we say being disgusted with sense gratification. But is that equal to be averse of sense gratification? No. We must come to yukta vairagya, means we must come to the neutral position, knowing everything belongs to Krishna and is for his enjoyment. And everything can be used in Krishna's service. And that understanding will bring us to a neutral point. And we will see Sudama was averse. And in this pastime, this will be corrected. Krishna will correct that. Because Sudama comes in Dwarka. And he sees all this opulence. And he understands, he sees all these devotees in Dwarka as much more advanced than him. And he sees they are not averse to sense gratification like he is. So then later we will see that Krishna will give him opulence when he comes home. And he will accept it because it's given by Krishna. And he will come to the neutral position. So that being disgusted with sense gratification means that we know that that will not give me satisfaction to the soul. Okay, I need it. I need it to maintain the body. But otherwise, yes, we take prasad and taking prasad means honoring a meditation of how Krishna tasted the prasad. So it becomes different. One stops running after sense gratification because one is absorbed in this higher wealth that Sudam had. And that higher wealth was, he was living in a relationship with Krishna. He was his best friend. Does that help, Mother Kasturi?
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. So, anything else? Good. If there are no further questions, comments, we will continue the pastime of Sudam Vipra tomorrow and finish this chapter, but not a pastime, because we have two parts of it, two chapters of this amazing pastime. So, Mother Prabhupada, please.
Raj, will class be at the same time tomorrow or it's earlier?
No, it's the same time tomorrow, and then it changes on for Saturday and Sunday. Then it's earlier. But tomorrow it's the same time. Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada.
Thank you, Maharaj. Nice to see
Recording
you.
stopped.
Hare Prabhupada.